Hi, welcome to the BD Roundtable. We spoke with Jason Cooney about how law firms should be optimizing their content for SEO and how it can generate more leads for your firm. We cover everything from keyword research, how to structure the content to keep people on the page, and ultimately how BD and marketing professionals can collaborate with their lawyers to generate better content. So if you want to join future calls and participate in the Q&A sessions, head on over to bdroundtable.com to sign up to become a member for free. When you do, you get access to our private Slack group community, which is full of legal marketers like yourself. Now, here's Jason.
All right, let's get into it. Jason, how did you find yourself working with professional services firms, and then even specifically on the tender and bid writing?
I started off working as a bid writer in a travel firm, and that was mainly because I was one of the people in the travel firms that liked writing and had been to uni. So in any firm with tenders and bids, if you say, I'm happy to do a tender, then you'll be popular. So the work sort of flowed through. And with professional services, switching over from travel to legal, that was purely a monetary decision just because of the level of remuneration. So I accidentally found myself in legal, and I sort of followed that on. And I sort of just blended into consulting from working in-house like many people do about 7-8 years ago. And that meant that I would switch from professional services or legal to all professional services, because if a client called and they're an engineering firm or an accounting firm, when you're consulting, you still take the client on. And that's how it kind of evolved.
Right. Now, with your specialization in tender writing, it's very clear what the intent of that specific writing is for, right? You are writing to get the work.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case when we look at law firm websites or law firm articles. It's all about sort of, oh, look at us, look at us, look at us. We do this, we do this, we do this.
Yeah.
But it's not very clear, and it was very clearly not written for SEO. So can you sort of walk us through maybe the basics for those who didn't join our SEO primer? When we say SEO, what are we talking about here?
Any kind of so when you look at the firm's website, one of the motivators or the objectives is to establish credibility. But another objective is obviously to rank on Google with the purpose of lead generation. So you're going to generate lead and generate inquiry. SEO is kind of essentially the idea of optimizing your website and your content to ensure you rank appropriately, not only on Google, but also on Bing and through other search engines, depending on where you are around the globe, for the purpose of either kind of establishing credibility as a firm, but for the main purpose of generating leads or whatever your purpose may be. But the main ultimate purpose is lead generation.
Right. And that doesn't involve any pay-per-clicks or any paid advertising, right? This is all sort of free usage, best practice that we're going to be talking about, right?
Most certainly, yes. So paid advertising or paid leads is a different avenue. But with SEO, it's I'd say a medium to long-term investment that pays off. And there is also an argument that you can also get an increased quality of lead from SEO, because a lot of buyers are relatively educated. So if they jump on Google and they're searching for a property lawyer, for example, they'll know that the first 3 are advertisements because they're notified as advertisements. And they might scroll through those and go, okay, well, this is actually a natural SEO oriented content, and pay a bit more credibility to that in their search.
Okay. So for the purposes of our discussion today, let's sort of work under the premise that, okay, there's a BD manager who's responsible for writing a new practice group page, and they're trying to get some content on there. So that's sort of our framework. Yep. Can you walk us through, I mean, what are the best practices? What should we be doing before we write? You know, should we be doing keyword research? I mean, what's sort of the guideline? What's the process that you would recommend we follow?
Okay. So if I'm sitting there as a BD manager for a practice group, and it's a new practice group, before we write, there are a few things we should be doing. The first should be, we need to identify who our buyers are. So who our potential clients are. Once we've identified that, then we need to know essentially how they search, or what they're going to search for. So what they're going to search for, or how they search, is what you would describe as keyword research. So keyword research is looking at, okay, over the past 1.5 or 2 years, the word, and let's just say it's a property practice group, for example, the word kind of like property specialist, property lawyer has been searched 500 times, but the word property lawyer has been searched 1,000 times. But we also need to do something that's a bit, so that's your kind of keyword research side of it. But if I'm sitting there as a BD manager, I also need to think outside the square and look at different areas of specialization within my practice group. Because, okay, I might be servicing the property practice group, but within the property practice group, there would be different types of specializations. You know, you may have lawyers who specialize in service stations or gas stations. And there are, you know, specific skills in terms of environmental contamination reports and so forth that are within that area of expertise. So I need to think about the different sub areas within the practice group, for example, for property, and it might be a hotel specialist lawyer, gas stations, another lawyer who does farm and agricultural land and property, and then undertake specific keyword research for those sub areas, because you know, there are also long tail keywords or other ways that the potential clients will search, and they won't be writing, for example, I need a property lawyer, because that's quite generic. Someone might actually be writing, I need a lawyer who specializes in contamination reports because I'm going to purchase a $10 million gas station or service station. Or they may be searching something on the lines of lawyer specializing in agricultural land agistment title, that type of thing. So there are areas within each area. So I need to, as a BD manager, take a step back and say, okay, I've undertaken keyword research, but there are a whole lot of other additional potential keywords in areas that are long tail and short tail. So there are long words as well, which I need to write and account for in the content.
Okay, so
complicates it a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, what you just said takes a lot of work. So I was just sort of imagining, okay, so I need to get like a Word document or Excel document and just sort of, okay, break down the practice into its main practice and the sub practices, and then do the research. And I just linked into the video, and I'll link on YouTube to our previous video that we did about the SEO primer. And that covers all the technical aspects when you want to look for keywords and long tail keywords. So for those of you who are kind of wondering what is a keyword, how to do that, watch that video. But then you'll come up with a list of questions, right? These are what people are searching for. And then you need to sort of sit down with your partners and say, okay, what content can we write that will answer this question? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yes. Essentially, once you've got the questions or the keywords that you need to target, then you need to write a piece of content that has two purposes. The first is to include those keywords and questions and answer them. But the second is also you have to write the content naturally. So that means that if one of the most popular questions on Google is, I need a specialist property lawyer, you can't have your heading saying, I need a specialist property lawyer, and repeat that through. So what you need to do is you need to essentially cover all those keywords and the different combinations with long tail and short tail for that specific area, in a piece of content that is informative, firstly, also well structured and current, and it also needs to kind of excite the reader. So I would then sit down with the partner, the individual partner, and I'd say, okay, these are the keywords we need to cover for your specific area. This is the kind of topic. Now we need a piece of writing, but I would also say to the partner, if I'm a BD manager, and to get a better outcome, I would also say to them, here are 6 or 7 headings and subheadings that I've prepared. So we need to fill in this format. And if you do that, it's going to firstly give the partner the parameters and the guidance on what they need to do. So from a technical SEO perspective, having over 900 words and so forth, or 300 technically, but you need about 1,000 words. But also, it's going to provide them with that guidance, but it's also going to get you a better outcome, because when you ask them for that content and you've already prescribed the headings and a few notes within it about what you're looking for, then you're going to get a better outcome back, and it's going to make your job a lot easier when you need to kind of prime and fix up the content that they've provided before you load it onto the website. So yeah, so that would be a kind of the most efficient way of getting the content you want out of them.
Now,
that covers everything. Yep.
are there any practices or areas of law that this kind of wouldn't work for?
Yeah, most definitely. I think if you were looking at you've got to look at the buying groups and the buyer's actions. Now, one example would be insurance law. Insurance law, typically, insurance firms or buyers, so your major insurers, if you look at the Australian market, you've got, like QBE and a couple of others. They work off tenders and panels. Like, they generally buy off tenders, and it's relationship focused. Now, if I was a claims manager or a legal counsel in insurance law, I wouldn't Google, I need an insurance lawyer. So you just, if you're drafting content, that you wouldn't draft it with an SEO mindset for insurance, it would need to be more focused on establishing credibility. So describing what you would do. It would work on the consumer side of it. So say you were a lawyer who specializes in workers' compensation, but you're on the plaintiff side, then SEO would be fantastic, because you've got essentially consumers, people who have tripped over and said, I tripped over in a supermarket, I need a lawyer to make a claim type thing, searching in Google. But for insurance as such, that's an example of one that isn't applicable. If you look at the family area of law, it generally, SEO could be useful. Because both sides of the equation, say for example, if there's an argument over a family trust or something along those lines, both sides of the equations are essentially consumers that would go for it. And in the business, if you look at it from a corporate perspective, say you're a property lawyer, as in our first example, then it would probably be applicable, because if I'm a property investor, I would search for a specialist lawyer. It's natural. Yep.
Right. Okay. So, all right. Hopefully, we've done all of the keyword research. We know who our clients are. We know the intent. We know all of that sort of stuff. Now, I guess the more difficult part is actually writing the content in a way that's engaging, right? Because you want to keep people on the page, and you want to keep people clicking to different content, right? So. What advice would you give us on how to structure the content in a way that is a little bit more engaging, and will help us, stay on keep people on the page?
Sure. A few things. I'd say firstly is you would want to split your content up into your standard type of format. So an introduction, a body of text, and the conclusion. In order to keep people on the page and potentially clicking through, although you would write at the end of the content in your conclusion, XXX person is a specialist property lawyer, you can keep it as a kind of discussion, the content. So the content needs to tell a story, and the normal best practice writing techniques of short sentences, keeping an active voice and so forth. That's all needs to be incorporated into your writing. So you would use kind of best writing strategy, best practice writing strategy. You would need to have headings within the content that spell out what you are going to say and do. And it needs to be kind of skim friendly. So if someone skims through it, and they may very well look at it from the perspective of, I'm just checking to make sure someone that knows what they're talking about in this area, and then I'll call straight away. So you might have people who don't really want to read the content, but the content still needs to be kind of there. And when that's the case, your headings need to spell out what you're going to say and what your capabilities are. In addition to that, so I would say, okay, first step is to split it up within headings. Second step is to write an introduction that essentially summarizes your experience in the area and your specialization in the area. Then you've got your kind of main body content flowing through. And that's where you would slowly and subtly sell your expertise. Yep, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, because a lot of the content that we get is pre-written by lawyers. Okay, yep. Let's say there's a legal change or regulatory change on real estate or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. The very first paragraph that they write, the very first sentence that they write is, pursuant to section 42 of the labor code, and you don't really know what the main point is, what is the real change, until the very end. Do you think it would be worth it for the BD teams or whatever to kind of come up with a template, or would that be too prescriptive for the lawyers?
Oh, no. I would definitely come up with a template without a doubt. It's it makes sense. If you let the lawyers go kind of like all out in their way of writing, it generally will not sell anything. I mean, they'll explain the change at the end, but that's about it. Also, the readers may or may not be legally qualified. A company executive or their in-house counsel may have told their assistant, we've got this problem, I need a lawyer that knows about this area, and told them to go off and Google and search it. So from that perspective, I would provide the lawyers with a template and ask them to fill it in, and the template needs to guide them. So the first part would be establishing and showing expertise. So a general description saying, our practice has been providing services in the legal, in property area for over XX amount of years. We cover these areas, team of 6 and so forth. So introducing the team. Then you may have, you may touch on some of the legal points or the cases that are critical, because there's a chance that someone will search that case. And that's okay, but that needs to come later on in the content, and it would only be brief. So I would go back, I would go to the partner with a fairly detailed template with the headings, proposed headings pre-written, and also notes in there instructing them on what we want. And I would say to the partner, this is what we've got to work with. And what I think is useful, especially if you're putting together a template of, say, new website, and you're the BD manager, say you've got to manage, 20 different practice areas, for example, and you want to get some consistency across it, is you need to have a pre-filled form for them to fill in for their content, for their practice area, that you can send through to them and say, okay, this is what the meta description, these are the focus keywords, but more importantly, this is the draft template for your content. Now fill it in. You've got 900 words, no more, no less, and it needs to cover these areas. And if you do that in any organization, you're going to have more consistency across the website. It's going to be well thought out. It's going to be SEO friendly. And the lawyers can't kind of get away with anything. And I think they respect it as well. When you've done the work, you take a lot of the thinking away from the lawyer. So they don't need to think about anything besides filling this form in, and you get a better outcome for them and for yourselves. If you give them a blank sheet of paper, then you don't know what you're going to get back.
Yeah, and then you don't have to waste all the time translating all the legalese into something that people actually read.
Yeah. And that's challenging.
Yeah. So I think it would be well worth, maybe I'll try and come up with the template for the BD Roundtable, like a sample of what we could use to work with the lawyers and say, okay, here's the topic. What is the main issue? Who should care? And now what? What action do you want the people to do or to take once they've read it, right? Because you want to very clear at the end, you want to direct them to do something. Ideally, give us a call or,
Most definitely. And I think as well, it's because of the way people read and how busy people are, at the end and also halfway through it. If you can put a small call to action in the content halfway through, it can be helpful from a lead generation perspective.
So what would that look like? Like
it would be a brief piece of content in the writing, saying Jennifer from our team has extensive experience in this specific area with a link to Jennifer's profile on the website. As well as your kind of final, if you need any assistance or legal expertise, give our team a call and a call to action, your main call to action. It can be helpful only because sometimes it's not a must do, but sometimes people will not read even the most well-written content. It will be so good or it will be so engaging that halfway through they'll just want to call you. They'll want to contact. So if you've got someone thinking, okay, yep, they're good, they're what I want, then you want to get them to that call to action before they've read the rest of the text, depending on its length. But in general, the problem or the potential problem with lawyers or the way that the content comes across is that it doesn't have a call to action and it doesn't lead to a lead. So what they can do is they can write a whole lot of content and it may rank well, but it's not designed to say, call us now and discuss your matter type thing. And that's what you need to do, or else you're going to have a website which doesn't actually generate revenue. But
we may get a bit of pushback from the lawyers that, we don't want it to sound too salesy. This is a law firm. It's a bit, or you don't want to sound like a used car salesman. So how do we navigate that line between sales content and informative, like value-added content?
It's quite challenging. So I think there's a few ways to do it. One is you can have it fairly ensuring that it's kind of tactfully written. But sales is sales, and it's something that comes up in a lot of LinkedIn posts as well now. You can be reading something that's fairly informative, and then at the end it says, if you're interested in this area, call us. And you're thinking, why did they have to put that in? I would have called them anyway if I wanted it type thing. So I think the second is the content needs to be serious and focused and specialized. So if it's a generic piece of content on the property law capacity, then it's when you put, like some kind of sales focus on it, it can come off a little bit more tacky. But when it's highly specialized content, then the reader doesn't have an issue with it because they know it's such a specialized area. They know what you're talking, they know what they're talking about. And then it would, just a simple line saying John Jeffrey's partner specializes in this specific area of law kind of sends the message across. So I think they respect quality, the readers respect quality. And if they see that you've taken the time to prepare quality, informative content, then a little bit of a sales focus is not a problem. And it's our job, I suppose, as BD managers to communicate that to the lawyers and give them confidence that works, but also have the link in the mind of the lawyers to money, because depending on if it's an equity partner or a partner or a senior associate, and their mindset as lawyers changes. I've personally found that equity partners are fairly easy or easier to communicate with. Like you can make a direct link between this is going to drive and increase revenue, whereas another kind of like non-equity partner might have a stronger focus on some, like might be a bit more combative about it, or defensive and say, it's kind of too salesy, but you've got to make the link in their minds easy for them. And I think it's also important for us BD managers to stay humble and give the lawyer an excuse. So when if they say, no, it's too salesy, we say, no, this is mandated. We're doing this over all the different practice group areas. And it's kind of like not a problem. But what you do is you take the blame off them so that they still keep their credibility, they still keep their prestige, and we kind of, as BD managers, do the dirty work and are the ones that are pushing the salesy focus. Because I think a lot of the time they want it, they just want to, the lawyers just want to say that they don't want to look salesy, but really they do. Yeah. Yeah. So they want the outcome, but they just want us to be the ones that scapegoats, which is our job. So it's fine.
That's right. Okay, Jason, I have a whole list of questions which I'll save for the Q&A session. But for those of you who are watching on YouTube and not BD Roundtable members, where can they get in touch with you?
I've got a website, tsaks.com, and we've got 4 offices. So we've got 4 different kind of mini websites. For people in the UK, it's tsaksconsulting.com, tsaksconsulting.com, and also in Australia, we're the Tender Team, thagenderteam.com.au. But the easiest way is just to email me. So it's info@thetenderteam.com.au.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason. We appreciate you taking the time today.
Yes.